Hi Music 189ers! In this Module 3 wrap-up video, I want to focus on classical multi-movement form. For Step 3 of Module 3, you were to explore and read about the classical period and the specific genres that feature multi-movement form. So I want to differentiate between form and genre. So genre, this is a way to classify pieces together that have like characteristics. So one of the like characteristics could be its formal structure, and that is why certain genres could be related if they feature similar forms. Multi-movement form, or form in general, is related specifically to structure. So we can have genres in the classical era, such as symphonies, string quartets, and concertos. They're all separate genres because they are distinguished by who's performing, the types of instruments that are performing in the genre, how many movements comprise the genre, and something that brings them together, however, is this idea of form, because the classical era was a time of formal structure, which we can associate with ideas from the Enlightenment. So if we scroll down to multi-movement cycle, a movement, remember, is a self-contained work, and you can technically perform it on its own. However, it is conceptualized by a composer with other movements to create whatever genre that composer is composing. So in the multi-movement cycle, we have multiple movements. And depending on the genre, right, so how we're classifying specific works together, this could feature a different number. And certain genres are demarcated from other genres by always having a certain number of movements. So a symphony in the classical era typically was comprised always of 4 movements, versus a concerto was typically defined by 3 movements. Of course, this changes as we move throughout different time periods after the classical era, but traditionally that was a formal demarcator between the two. So movement 1 is what you focused on for your assignment, Mozart's Symphony in G minor. And what I find is that students have difficulty hearing the different sections of sonata form. So sonata form is the form of the first movement of a multi-movement structure. So this is very abstract. I'm just speaking about the form unrelated to any certain genre, right? Because we can have multi-movement form for many different genres, and exactly how many movements we have, that will depend on the genre. So I'm just focusing abstractly on the form itself. Sonata form is always used as the first movement, and it has a specific characteristic tempo of being fast, it's long, and it's dramatic. Sonata form is comprised of 3 primary sections. And as I said, students have trouble hearing the difference, and that's perfectly all right, because composers don't treat this systematically in an ideal way all the time. We have some ideal examples that you've listened to by Mozart and Haydn. However, more often than not, composers will actually deviate and play with these forms, which can be difficult for a non-music major to hear, and that's okay. So the 3 primary parts of sonata form include the exposition, development, and recapitulation. In your assignment for Symphony number 40, I wanted you to focus on musical elements within each part of sonata form, because this is what is going to help you hear the different parts. Form, when it comes down to it, is all about repetition and contrast. So when we hear repeats, this will signify something to us about the form. And when we hear difference within those repetitions, this usually indicates that we've moved to another part of the form. So in our exposition, we are introduced to 2 primary themes. And the most important way of differentiating these themes is actually by harmony. And I know this is difficult to hear, especially because this does not have to be a major versus minor difference. It could be just two different major keys, or it could be two different minor keys. What you listen to in the symphony in G minor, or Symphony Number 40 by Mozart, there was a difference between minor and major, and some of you were having difficulty with that. That's perfectly understandable. So that's why I have you listen to the other musical elements. Hopefully they can help demarcate the form as well, in addition to in addition to harmony. So our theme 1, think about it as our first character. The character is defined by our musical elements. So let's say theme 1 is Dr. Hoover, and I am pretty disjunct and pretty loud and in a major, happy, boisterous key. But I am contrasted by theme 2. Theme 2 is my sister. You guys don't know my sister, but she's a middle child and I'm the older child, so you know there's some Freudian stuff going on there. I love her very much. But she is quieter and she is in a minor key. And she is a little bit more lyrical and conjunct, if we're going to describe the melody. And so you have to listen to those musical elements to hear the two themes. Something to note is that there are transitions, or what we call bridges, between the parts as well, so between themes and between the three primary parts of sonata form, the exposition, development, and recapitulation. So sometimes when you hear repetition, you're like, where am I going? Where am I going? Just buckle up, stay along for the ride, because usually you'll hit very contrasted material, which indicates the next section. So the exposition usually repeats. So you hear theme 1, you have some type of little transition called the bridge, and then we get to theme 2. So major, happy, Dr. H, contrasted by minor, lyrical, contemplative, quiet, sister of Dr. H. Then we'll go back and say, hey, this is Dr. H again, just in case you were forgetting, as more exposition. And hey, this is theme 2 again. It's exactly the same, and it's an exact repeat. Musicians would just see a repeat sign in the music. What happens after our introduction of theme 2, within the exposition a second time, we have a different transition that goes to the development. So we have added material after theme 2, and then we get the development. The development in sonata form is all about modulation, fragmentation, modulation, fragmentation, modulation, fragmentation. That's what I like to chant to students when they see me face to face. I'm sure they find it annoying. I don't care. So what do these two terms mean? So fragmentation just means we're going to take our themes and we're going to take the building blocks of the themes called motives, and we're going to develop those. So we might change the contour of them a little bit. We'll keep the primary or essential characteristics of our themes, but we'll play with them in the development. And then we'll modulate. So the development, our apex here, is the most unstable harmonically in our first movement or the sonata form. It's where all the conflict is happening. So say Dr. H and her sister, this is where they're having fights about who's going to take care of mom and dad when they're in the assisted living home. I have no idea. They're having fights. That's called #adult problems once you reach your 30s, kids. Sorry to let you know that. They have fights. They don't know. They're trying to win out. I want my opinion to win out. She wants her opinion to win out. Sometimes it's only the articulation of motives from one theme, such as the case in Mozart's symphony. It was just theme 1's motive, the ba-da-dum, 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 ba-da-dum. This motive, ba-da-dum, it's very short, was the primary motive developed throughout the development. What we have is this transition where we're going to modulate back to our home key. So our two contrasting keys in the exposition, theme 1 and theme 2, are not going to be contrasted in the recapitulation. Instead, everything is in tonic or the home key. We do not move to the contrasting key. So in this case, Dr. H wins out. Woo! Theme 1 and theme 1's harmony is going to win the arguments that happened in our conflicting development. And theme 2 is going to take on the opinion, persona, whatever you want, of theme 1 by remaining, in this case, in a major key, a happy key. Woo! happy and boisterous. You might, of course, always have modulation. You don't always have one main key uh, in terms of. Let me start again. You have one primary harmonic center, a major key because theme one won out, but you still might have tiny modulations because that's what makes music interesting. And we will end in our home key. So another way I like to think about it, think about you and your best friend and whatever universities you went to. Say you decided to stay home, right? So you're the home key. You decided to stay close to home where a friend or sister or whatever, brother, decided to go further out from home. And the development is basically the farthest out that the themes go in terms of their development as people, musical people. And then in the recapitulation, everything comes together, everybody's back home. Yay, it's a nice story with a beginning, middle, and end. And just historically, so you know, the development of sonata form and changes in sonata form in relation to these characters actually does align with the development of the late 18th century, 19th century novel. So there is a similarity between literature and music. So that's sonata form. And you listen to a listening guide, Eine kleine Nachtmusik, a little serenade, to hear a short example of sonata form, and then you did your separate listening assignment table wherein I had you try to listen for all these different musical elements to demarcate the form, and then listen to a YouTube video and a YouTube video analysis. And then I provided an extra key after I graded them as well. So please check that out. The rest of multi-movement form, so the other movements, so typically in a four movement work genre, such as a symphony, which is always in four movements in the classical era, you have a slower, contemplative, lyrical movement, and it could take a variety of forms. We focused on the theme and variations form. The third movement is always the same form. It is minuet and trio form, and simply that's just A, B, A. It's a ternary form. And then the fourth movement could be a variety of forms. That's why we didn't have a specific listening example. The table here summarizes it for you. So we have the big multi-movement form, and then that assignment that you completed for the symphony was just investigating the first movement. But you could continue on and try to decipher on your own the rest of the three movements in that symphony and see if they align with this analysis, which they do. So I demarcated, I'm saying demarcate a lot, and I apologize. I defined multiple genres that feature multi-movement forms, such as the symphony, the string quartet, serenade, and hopefully you listened to the form over and over again with your listening guides and it's becoming more familiar. But I did note that some of you had some trouble or difficulty with your assignment in terms of hearing the musical elements. So if you have any questions, of course, you can let me know. And I will see you in the future. Bye.